about it. And he got this information straight, but he went back to the man at the gate and told him that no, he had been misinformed and that was not the case. But kids, I mean, kids are really, really turned on by somebody that's their specialty. And they will have wonderful conversations. And that's something that it's much harder to do at school, that you can so much more easily do with them at home, is you go search out people who really know and love what it is that your child wants to explore.
Portland has amazing resources.
Yeah.
I think I came from a smaller rural community, so it's kind of amazing to be in a city where you have all of these museums. And I know that students in my class have made connections with people at the library and then have kind of explored all these amazing opportunities that I didn't even know existed in this city. I don't think their parents even knew existed. But as a third grader, they can do volunteer work at the Humane Society just because they ask so many questions, and they think the people at the Humane Society were just excited that here's a kid who's curious and doing research and wants to follow through, so you can access all these resources. The library has free cultural passes too, and there's always like free things going on in the library. So if you get a library card, you can go talk to the children's librarian there, and just for free go to lots of local museums and things like that.
Other questions?
So how is Spanish, how does Spanish language come in?
How's it happening? So you know that all the assistants in the classroom speak Spanish, and they are working very hard to use Spanish primarily as the language that they're using in the classroom. Then there is direct instruction that the students are receiving in Spanish. I would say about an hour and a half a week of direct Spanish instruction where they're getting a lesson. And then on the shelves, there are all kinds of Spanish materials that the children are able to choose and use during morning and afternoon work cycle. In my classroom, what that looks like is Colin uses Spanish pretty much all the time unless he's helping children solve a conflict. Because we found that if children are having a conflict with each other, it's working out a little bit better right now for him to use English. But he's been using Spanish a lot, and picture cues and vocabulary cards to really help the kids gain that kind of vocabulary. Right now it's all about work and all about Montessori work time and helping the kids problem solve or get work done in the morning. Then in the afternoon they have an hour and a half long Spanish music work time. He gives a lesson for half an hour a day on Spanish or music. Frequently they're integrated. And then the children go on to a work time. During the work time, I'm doing overview, so I'm helping the kids choose music or Spanish projects, using my limited Spanish ability to try and help them with whatever that project is. And then he's giving one-on-one lessons, or small group lessons, kind of the same way that I do in the morning with math and culture and all of those things. We've been working on using Spanish, and like they did a cooking project today, so they were learning about Argentina the last 2 weeks, so they made empanadas and pizzas really popular in Argentina. So the whole cooking project, the idea was that it was done in Spanish. So just giving them that vocabulary of cooking. I know when I was learning Spanish, all of my vocabulary came from dancing. And it's just because you're doing this movement and you're doing these different things, you retain that vocabulary, you're tapping into a different part of your mindset. So all of the classrooms are trying, working together and doing those different mixture of activities.
So there you've got the movement tied in again.
Exactly.
Can I just do a little follow-up? Do you feel like it's working? And do you really feel like it's sticking with the kids?
I think that with everything, we can do a better job, and we have higher expectations. So I know that as a staff, every staff meeting, we are talking about, okay, we're doing this with Spanish, and we're glad that we're making progress, but we want to do more. Because we, as a staff, are really committed to being like a fully bilingual school, so that we're getting lessons done in Spanish and in English. So I was giving fraction lessons and comparing like greater than less than lessons using Spanish vocabulary. And that was really exciting that we were able to have those two languages going on. The thing about language learning is they say that it takes 7 years for you to actually learn a language. And right now, most of the kids, the only Spanish that they're getting is through this one person at school speaking Spanish to them. So we're trying to figure out, okay, they need more exposure to the language. And what can we set up that's really going to help develop their language fluency better so that they're feeling more comfortable speaking and using it more with each other. You know, you are starting to hear it on the playground, you know, when they're jumping rope, or when we do sports, they do all of the counting and things like that in Spanish, so they're getting some of the vocabulary sticking. But, you know, we're continuing and trying to figure out how can we really offer a stronger language program. If your child is a native Spanish speaker, then there's a different type of Spanish program that they're getting. They're part of the whole group activities and really helping with the vocabulary and leading the activities in that way, but then also getting a separate, more intense instruction based on where their reading and writing abilities are in Spanish. So it's a more individualized curriculum based on that.
Yeah, so I was just going to ask if you guys have plans in the program. If you guys have researched some of the schools that have effective models and copying them.
Yeah, definitely. We are in touch with people at Atkinson right now. Atkinson is in Southeast, and they have a dual immersion program, I think is the label that they use. So we're talking to them, trying to figure out, okay, what curriculum resources are you using? How are you doing this? What's your structure? There's also a bilingual Montessori school in Denver. So we're contacting them and trying to figure out what resources are you using and how are we doing that? So that one of the things that the staff is really committed to is having a strong Spanish program. I think last year the priority was, okay, we're a Montessori school and a Spanish school and we want to get established as a Montessori. But I don't even know how to stress enough that really everyone on staff here is so committed to teaching at a school that it has a strong Spanish and a strong English component to it that we want to figure out, you know, what are the resources we need. Kim is really committed to that and the board is as well, that they're helping us find resources. We have money to bring in more and more materials. So we have a lot more Spanish materials this year than last year. Our staff, our Spanish teachers are making materials constantly. We have a budget to get more curriculum materials, so it's definitely high on the priority list.
Are there any other questions? Did you want to, we've got about 5 more minutes, did you want to answer any of the ones that were on there? Or?
Well, you're the one that got the, you know, who
Maybe
had the questions. Which do you think is the most?
Maybe pick one.
I mean, what is work? What counts as valid work? Why is it choice? I mean, a lot of these things we touched on, and we tried to incorporate them, so we wanted to make sure we had them all just in case.
I think one of the most confusing things about the Montessori classroom, or questions I've been getting from parents, is the idea that children are all doing the same thing, or that all the second graders are doing the same thing, so that you want to compare your child. How are they progressing in second grade? Or how are they, you want to have a sense of what's going on. And what we're doing here is looking at the state standards. What are these certain skills that your child should learn by the end of second grade? Kind of keeping track of that and looking at your child as an individual. What is your child interested in? How do they learn? What are the things that are moving them forward in the classroom? And balancing that against the skills. So it's kind of this big balancing act. And through dialogue with the families, we want to help make sure that you guys are really well informed about the work that your children are doing and how they're progressing. But understanding that that looks really different for every child. So that, of the 30 kids in my class, no one is doing the same thing. If you looked at all of the work plans together, none of them are the same because kids are moving at different rates and interested in different things and just have really different learning styles. So you have some children who really balance out their day and they say they're going to do a math work and then a language work and a culture work, and the way they function is to be organized in that specific way. But then there are other children who are driven by what interests them that day. And they come in and that's what they choose, and they work incredibly hard on one work for 3 hours, and they're so invested in that project, it's really valid work. But they really have only done one thing that day, but that's okay, because they're so invested in that. You'll see kids who will, like my hundreds board group, that they'll just only do the hundreds board.
It's our child.
And I know that they will balance out. So she was so into the hundreds board, and now she's so into the stamp game in addition. So naturally, she's just going to be beyond the hundreds board, I'm done with that, and then move on to the next thing. And it's kind of confidence in this process. It balances out. And your teacher, if your guide or teacher is concerned about it, then they're going to contact you and say, well, I would really like your child to do more writing work. Can you guys talk about that at home? And then maybe tomorrow they can